What's up everyone, and welcome to another Rust electrical tutorial. I'm Austin, and today I'm going to be talking about the differences between the Nih Core and the power loop. We're going to quickly discuss how to build these, and then we're going to talk about how they work, what are the differences, what do you need to know. And so we'll go ahead and get started with the Nih Core. I have it hooked up to this power bank. You don't need to use a power bank for this. I'll link this in case you're curious what this is, but really just note that we have this large battery, and I'm going to be making use of these 5 solar panels and ignoring the wind turbine entirely. So the Nih Core itself is fairly easy to build. It's 2 branch switches, a splitter, a memory cell, a blocker, and 2 OR switches. Everything after the OR switch up here is for the tutorial. It's not part of the circuit. So from this OR switch down is how you're going to build it. You're going to want to wire it exactly like it is shown on the screen because the Nih Core makes use of the properties associated with the splitter and the memory cell. Just simply stated that the splitter, when it turns on, when it's powered on, it powers on power out 1, then 2, then 3 really quickly. And then there's a hierarchy associated with the memory cell inputs. But the important thing to know is that you must say, for instance, put power out 1 must go to the set input, power out 2 must go to the reset input, and so forth. So make sure you wire it up just like this. The only actual setting beyond what you need for your powered items is that you need to set this branch down here to 4 so that you have coming out of here 4 arriving. This uses 1 and you have 1 left over for each of these. That's it. This one here is going to be adjustable. It's whatever it is you set you need for your base, whatever you're trying to power. Basically, it's kind of more related to what you have coming in. And so how does this thing work? So basically, first off, you got to give credit where credit's due. This is a really, really brilliant circuit. It does a really cool thing. And essentially what it does is it takes some root power. So in this case, we're mimicking that we have 5. I'm going to set this to 100, simulating 5 fully powered solar panels. And so what happens is the output of this, this would be your root power. It would be, coming out of whatever your root power is, coming out of here. And that runs to this input here on this first branch in the Nih Core. And what happens is that whatever you send through, so you're going to send through, in this case, I have an example of 82 Rust watts I'm sending through because up here I want 80. It's just my example number. Say I have 80 Rust watts worth of stuff in my base that starts here, including this branch. And so I'm saying, hey, I need 80 coming out. So I'm going to send 82 because you got to count for these 2 switches, the power they need. And then whatever's left over, in this case, I have 100 coming in, I have 17. And so what the Nih Core does is you'll notice that the battery does not have any active usage because it's not in use while there's enough root power to power items in your base. I should note actually real quick that what you couldn't see for wiring it up is that the output, the power out of this bottom OR switch over here, that runs all the way to the charging into input, the power in on whatever your battery is. And then the output of your battery that you have hooked up runs over to the input on this blocker. So other than what, that was the only 2 things you couldn't see. And so the way it works is whatever you have powering into the Nih Core, as long as it's over what in fact specifically 6 over what you or 7 over, I guess I should say, what you need, it's going to run everything off of the root power sources. In this case, it's these 5 solar panels, and then the battery is just going to remain on standby with no active usage, so no load, no drain. Whatever you have in excess of what you're using comes out of here. You have 6, 7. You got to use some power here. 1 for this, 4 for that, which means coming out of here we have 12. This takes 1. We have 11 left over. That's just trickle charging that battery. In this case, just keeping it at full capacity. And so what you need to know about this is that what happens is, let's say right now I've got 82 in here, which means the Nih Core requires 6 units of power over what you're using to stay on what we can call, say, the red side here or the root power side. So if I were to say put this to 88, we got, that's 6, 82 plus 6. You'll notice that I'm still on this side over here. I still have my 80 coming out. I've got 82 coming out of here, and I've got 5 coming out of here, which leaves 4 for this, and we got 0 coming out of here because this 5, 1 of them requires for this switch, and we need 4 running from this out here to the input on this splitter so that we have 1 coming out each of here. This is what keeps the circuit on the left side, on the root power side, this red line side. That's what keeps it powering everything based on your root power. The moment I lose just one rust watt beneath what I need, so in this case, again, I have to set to 82, which means to keep it on this side with nothing left over to charge the battery. Still no active usage, so it's not draining, but now I'm no longer trickle charging it. You need 6 over. So the moment I take this right here down to 87, you'll notice that the light flashed because I swapped over now to the battery. So now the battery is registering whatever I have hooked up, in this case 82. The battery is registering whatever I have hooked up, to the base. In this case, I have this mock base load value set to 80, so that I'm, this is like what it would be, turrets, lights, whatever is going on in there. And so you'll notice it says 82, but now my charging has greatly increased to 80. Now it's important to note that 80 is actually not enough input to power an active usage of 82 without losing time on your battery, losing rust watts on your battery, your capacity. So essentially what this is doing is it's swapped over to battery and rerouted all the incoming power to charge the battery. And so the moment I go over 87, so 88 meaning, or 88 meaning 6 over whatever I'm drawing, I'm now going to swap back over. You'll notice this is blocked once again. Now I'm back over to this inverted output side. And so what I have now is no active usage again. And again, no trickle charge available to charge the battery. But let's say this, my power came up a little bit. Maybe I'm back at 98 or something like that. You'll notice that now I've got some extra going through. So 10 arriving down here, 9 left over. So now I've got 9 trickle charging this battery again with an active usage of 0. And so that's essentially what it does, is that the Nih Core, it's going to depend on this value here. So whatever you set this to, plus 6 is the minimum to keep it on this side. Anything under this value, plus 6. So if let's say 80, 6 is 88, 87 or lower, it's going to swap it over to the other side to run off battery power and then reroute whatever's left by swapping the memory cell over and sending that back to the battery. And so, we operate on the output side normally when we have enough root power, and then we operate on the inverted output side or default side of the memory cell when we don't have enough power. So it's, you kind of have to play with it, but what you'll notice is once you dip below that value that you need, so in this case, I'm using 82. So once I dip below 88, I'm going to swap over to the inverted output side and send whatever I've got going to the battery while I use it. So depending on, this is going to greatly depend on, this minimum charge equation. I've talked about this before. Whatever your active usage is divided by 0.8 gives you the minimum charge. So you need more than that. That's the balance charge. I should probably really call that the balance charge. You need whatever that is plus some to keep a battery charging. And so when this swaps over, so right now I'm using 82. If I drop down to 87, there we go. I've swapped over the battery. Yes, I'm using the battery. Yes, I'm sending 80 units of power over that battery while I'm using it, but that's not enough. 82 divided by 0.8 is 102.5. So I need 103 rust watts to keep this from draining. Now it's going to drain real slow, so that's okay. But just note that while you're using this, whatever you do here, if you don't have enough rust watts, basically what you can't do with it with any of these is magically power things in your base that you don't have the root power to keep. You have to be able to charge that battery. But what the Nih Core allows you to do is it gives you a little bit extra time when you lose power or something happens. It'll reroute power to slow down that draw, which is a huge thing. That's a real powerful thing. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the power loop. I've made a video about this before. You might have seen this as the infinite power loop. It's more appropriately called the power loop now, but the power loop essentially does the exact same thing as the Nih Core, except that it doesn't reroute the power when you swap sides. So right now we're currently on the root power side. I've got, if you look at the battery, I've got, no active usage. I'll link this if you want to know how to build this, or you can just pause this here and hook it up. But basically this branch stays in its default configuration. This branch is what you set, just like I said over there. In this example, I need 50 units of power in this base. So I've got 50 coming out of here. I set this to 51 to account for the 1 rust watt this thing needs. And that's it. And so, but what happens here is, let's say I were to, currently I've got, let's see, what do I got coming out of here? I've got arriving, I've got 77. This right here comes from your root power. This is the input from your root power. In this case, I've got up here 4 solar panels coming into these root combiners, so its output runs to this input here. And then the battery itself, the power in runs out of this power out of the middle branch, which stays in its default configuration. And then the battery's output here, this blue line, runs into the blocker power in down here. And so that's the full installation. Really simple, but the big difference between the Nih Core and the power loop is that the power loop does not redirect power to the battery when it swaps over. The battery just is fully in charge until it swaps back over and can charge after. So depending on what you're doing, this is often sufficient if you don't have the room or you don't want to build something that complicated. If you have the root power available to recoup the battery when you do swap back over, then this will also work. It really just depends on what you're doing. So we'll just demonstrate this really quick. Again, I have set to 51. We have no active usage on the battery because the battery is currently blocked, because we have enough root power coming in here, which is 80 to supply that 51. Plus we've got 28 left over, of which 2 of them are keeping the blocker, the pass-through blocked. And then the rest of that is coming off here and just trickle charging this battery, just constantly while there's enough power to do that. The moment we lose power below our value, so I'm just gonna unhook one side of this here. There we go. So now we've swapped over to where we're running everything out of the battery. So the battery is sending everything it has. Of course, we're only going to use what the active usage is. So we have an active usage of 52, but you'll notice that we have nothing coming in here, because the way this works, the power loop works, is that once we swap over, it's because of the way branch switches work. You can't just magically send extra stuff over. And so that's where the Nih Core takes care of that, is that, in the Nih Core, once we were in this situation over there, it was routing most of the, all the power it had to the battery to keep, to slow down its loss of power. So, right now the battery's getting nothing, and it's 100% just draining based on its active usage with no root power going into it. And so if I were to hook this back up, here we go. Now we are back over. We've swapped back over. This is blocked again. So we have 51 coming out of here. We've got 28. And so now the battery is getting charged with 25 arriving here. And it's just going to keep trickle charging with no active usage. So this does the same thing. It swaps between root power and battery. That swaps between root power and battery. But the huge difference between the two is that the Nih Core will then route whatever you have once you go below your threshold. That 6 threshold I talked about over here, and it's actually 8 you need over here to pass. But really the important part is the 6. Once you drop below that 6, so whatever you do plus 6, you need that or more to keep this on the root power side. Once you drop below that, it's going to send whatever it's got this way and over, well, I guess, really out of here and then over to the battery. And so that is, it just really depends on what you're doing. And there really is no substitute for having enough root power to power your stuff. So this minimum charge equation, your active usage divided by 0.8 equals your minimum charge, and then add some to keep it trickling. There is no substitute for that. So this doesn't allow you to, have just exactly enough stuff or a less, not enough root power to charge. If you do that, this or the Nih Core will power cycle back and forth, and your turrets or whatever will turn on and off as it dances between, if this thing's getting 87 and then 88 and then 87 and then 88, it's gonna turn this off. It's gonna swap between the two sides here, like it's gonna bounce between the two sides, which is gonna cycle the power of the things you have hooked up to it. So you do need to be careful that you supply either of these circuits with the at least whatever the minimum charge is based on this equation. You have to send that plus some, or it's not going to work right. So by doing so, by using these, what you're allowing for is temporary situations where the sun goes down or your wind power drops really low, or maybe you can't build really good wind power where you are. Whatever it is, it gives you some flexibility, a little bit of buffer room, if you will, to lose power, but it's not a substitute for having the correct power. So I hope that was clear, folks. The goal here is to help you understand, what these are good for. The Nih Core is an excellent circuit. I've used it. I know a lot of people that use it. And the power loop is also a great circuit. If you have enough root power coming in, you don't need to have, such complexity. It depends on what your goals are, the size of your base, the amount of stuff you're powering, you know, how much root power. Are you following this equation? Then you can use either one of these you want. You don't have to use a Nih Core or this. You know, if you have enough minimum charge coming to your battery, you don't need any of this. The battery itself is the buffer if it has whatever it needs. A battery, you know, a large battery at full capacity, active usage 100, needs 125 minimum. So if you have 150 on average all the time, you know, on average, then you will never need any of these. So it depends on your goal, you know. So, and that, folks, is just about all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. Otherwise, you can get me on my Discord. See you later.